Good evening, all our fellow deplorables. This is Gary Gabagool, my boy Sal, for the Red Podcast number 20.
What's up, everybody? How you doing?
We're starting off with an oldie but a goodie, Man for Man's Blinded by the Light. And this song is incredibly appropriate for several reasons. Number one, obviously, because of the eclipse today, which I really didn't partake in.
There's nothing to see, man.
There was nothing to see to me, just another day. But I actually think it's more appropriate because the liberal left, neo-Nazi progressive fascist group of Antifa, BLM, politicians, businesses, and the media are completely blinded by the light. And Sal and I want to start the broadcast off today with basically witnessing the left really ratcheting up their efforts to label, destroy, and basically erase American history, tradition, and everything that the founding fathers put together in the Constitution, as well as many other documents, to establish this great country and have it become what it has become in 2017.
Yeah, didn't you know? We're erasing history, man. Nothing that ever happened ever mattered.
Yeah, there's so many things we can start off with. I mean, this week, it's amazing. And Sal and I come on this broadcast every 7 days. And in 7 days, which in the spirit of history or time isn't a real long time.
It's a blink of the eye.
It's a blink of the eye. There's just so much stuff in 1 week, what's happening. And I think would be apropos to start off with the left that I just described, complete ability and the need to eradicate the monuments and statues that occurred.
You mean the alt-left?
Yeah, the alt-left, the progressives, which occurred this week. So you want to start off, Sal? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we saw it last week in Virginia. Now we're seeing in Baltimore. Now they're even doing like Chris Columbus ones.
Right.
And now like it's getting wild. And like, of course, certain senators and politicians and congressmen, after Trump said, hey, we need to get rid of Jefferson and Washington monuments, whatever does it stop? Of course, they were like, oh, see, he said it. So now let me start the petition to do it. And people are actually signing them to get rid of George Washington. I even saw an article that said, why do we have Mount Rushmore? Let's get rid of it.
Right. But the thing that fascinates me is here we are at, I'm an older person than Sal. Sal's 29. I'm going to be 52. In all of the 52 years of my life, never have I heard once any of these objects bothered anyone.
No.
Matter of fact, they never even were discussed. It didn't even come up. And then I heard some liberals say, oh, but it's been boiling over for years. Listen, when something boils over, you have to have a basis for an argument. So over the course of these years we're talking about, there has to be someone that might have said, you know what, this monument bothers us, or there has never been once. If you go back, not one person in politics or any type of community organization said anything about these monuments in the past. So like Sal and I said, and Sal and I predicted this every step of the way, the radical left always starts off with one topic, goes with it hard. If it doesn't stick, it'll move on to another one. So, for example, if this Confederate statue monument thing doesn't stick, Sal and I, a week from now or 2 weeks from now, will be talking about something else they're pissed off about. Because from this point forth, everything they've put forth has failed miserably, very badly.
I mean, it's another thing, like I want to talk about political correctness, PC culture in a little bit, but this is just another step. They're trying to absolve history and whitewash it, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And just try to make it theirs. Today I did a little research because I'm well-known advocate against Black Lives Matter. I do not like these people. I think they are the scum of the earth. So today I was like, you know what? I'm kind of a hypocrite because I've never went on Black Lives Matter to check out their mission statements and check out their websites. Like, I'm going to do that today. Maybe I was misinformed. I was not misinformed at one bit. They have 14 or 15 mission statements, and the two that just jumped out at me was social justice. There's three of them: social justice, globalism, and restorative justice. When I read restorative justice, I was like, what? How could that even? What is that, and why is that on there?
Restorative justice and social justice is everything that's wrong with our country today. Yeah. Everything, because basically what that's looking to do is divide the country. Now, people tend to tell me that they want to divide the country on race. I completely disagree. They're trying to, but I think ultimately what they want to do is divide us on conservatism versus ideological left progressivism. And because I'm going to tell you something, you go through Facebook or you go through YouTube, you see a lot of black patriots out there. And in the media, we see a lot. We see Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. We see Sheriff David Clark. We see Dr. Lee Elder. We see a lot of people. And then we have people we don't even know their names that are on there quite a bit. So I don't think this is a black and white issue, although the left is trying their damnedest with the media. And like Sal and I said from the beginning, ultimately, if you look at this in a wide paintbrush approach, the media is the ultimate devil, because this is the way I look at things. When you have good versus evil, there's always going to be two opposing forces. Always. In the history of time. Whether it's a war, whether it's a sport, whether it's political, there's always going to be two forces. The objective or unbiased group in all of this was always the media. Yeah. What we found now is the media is so slanted to the left. They're not even the media anymore. Sal predicted this on our second or third podcast, that mainstream media news, the ones that we all talk about, I'm not going to get into all the names, but we all know them. They are as far left as you can imagine. Matter of fact, there were reports today that CNN, CNBC actually came out and they skewed their stories on Antifa and tried so damn hard to say they were nonviolent. However, that's really difficult when you see a video of a 75-year-old woman who could be any one of our grandmothers. She was a sweet little old lady, and all she was doing was sitting there with an American flag. Well, what did you see? You saw about 4 cowardly, low-life Antifa members, men in black masks and hoods, knock her down, grab the flag, and drag her through the street. Now think about that, people. Who in their right mind would condone a 25-year-old man beating up a 75-year-old woman?
The alt-left.
Exactly. And then they're going to sit here and call themselves Antifa, which I don't know if you guys don't know. That stands for anti-fascism, anti-violent. That is the biggest crock of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. Matter of fact, when that's mentioned, somebody should just laugh at them, slap them in their face, and send them on their way.
I mean, it's so crazy, because if you actually try to have an intellectual debate with like an Antifa member or one of these Black Lives Matter people, they just can't do it.
No.
They physically can't do it.
No.
Literally, but to the point where, obviously, by the end of it, where they get so, you know, after the argument fails so hard and they have nowhere else to turn, they just call you racist. They call you these names.
See it every day.
And then they just try to, like, they try to debate you. Everything is race-based with the Democrats.
Correct.
It's so disgusting. And then they go, if you ask one of them, like, especially the video I showed you today,
yep,
from that news source I was showing, that kid was asking, he's like, you don't like to be in America? You don't think America is the greatest country in the world? And you know, these are little shitheads.
Right.
And then they're like, no, America isn't the greatest country in the world, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, tell me, what country in the world is better than America?
Yep.
And he'll go to him, well, like, what about Switzerland? What about Finland? What about those places? And he goes, okay, I'll mind you those. But he's like, do you understand, to get in those countries, have merit, just like we're trying to do here? You have to have some kind. They don't just allow you to move there. They don't just allow refugees. Well, they did allow refugees last time. You saw what happened there. He's like, you have to have merit. You have to have some kind of job. You have to have money. They don't just take you there. They're rich and prosperous for a reason.
well, it's funny because,
and then they, start going on.
Well, I would love to say to these people, well, you don't like America and you don't think it's great. That's fine. Sal and I would say wholeheartedly, God bless you. That's your opinion. Yeah. America is a free country.
That's what makes us great.
And that's what makes us great. But here's my question to you, you people, the members of Antifa. It's real simple. Get your belongings, gather your shit, Get a one-way plane ticket to where you want to go and don't come back. You know why you never do that? Because you're full of shit. You're hypocrites. You're cowards. Everything you spew has no basis of fact. It's just you talking on your emotions, your feelings, your political correctness, and your social justice bullshit that you strew every day to try to make us think you're morally superior, when in all actuality you're morons, and that's proven time and time again.
Your moral superiority just shows how immorally repugnant you actually are. Anything you say, you can't be taken seriously. It's such a shame that this happens to this half of our country.
It is, and there's a lot more people out there than we think. But it's funny because I was watching, and we mentioned him last week, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL. His name's Craig Sawyer. They call him the Saw Man. I'm going to mention him again because he has aligned himself with a group from Bozeman, Montana. And they're all special operators, military operators, like he mentioned. I don't have the man's name, but I do have his organization. And it's called The American Brand, BRAND.org. And what he's doing is interesting. And I applaud those gentlemen for doing so because they're patriots and heroes. But what they're doing is forming a counterbalanced organization to go against these Antifa members, these BLM members. Because he labeled this, it was interesting, he labeled this fourth dimension warfare. And when he said that, I didn't understand what he meant.
I like that.
Yeah, it's called fourth dimension warfare. And then after going into it a little more, I did my own research. And what he meant was there's three types of warfare and that we know about. You know, there's military, there's web-based or electronic, and then there's what do you call Secret Service or any type of intel you gather out in the field. Fourth dimension has never existed before, so he made that up. Yeah. And what he's saying is there's people like Angela Davis. If you don't know who Angela Davis is, she's a 60s black woman radical who formed the Communist Party. She's involved in this. There's Bill Ayers and Bernadette Doran, and we all know her and him. They blew up a building, a federal building, and they were actually friends at the University of Chicago with Barack Obama. We all know that. Then there's Saul Alinsky and his son David, who wrote The Rules for Radicals. We all talked about that. Sal and I probably talk about that every podcast.
Look that up, people, because if you haven't yet, that's the playbook narrative that they're running right now. You can see it through the media, through the alt-left propaganda that they spew out. This is exactly what they're doing, the Alinsky playbook.
Yeah, no, you're good. And then we have the #1 provocateur, which his name comes up on a daily basis. Sal mentioned last week he's wanted in Russia.
The enemy.
The enemy. He is the enemy. And that man's name is George Soros. And let me explain one thing to you about George Soros. He is a global terrorist. Not just an American terrorist, a global terrorist. And Sal and I have gone podcast after podcast of why he is. But the thing, if you guys didn't see a video I posted this week, there was a group of Antifa members chanting, "George Soros, where's our money? George Soros, where's our money?" So these are just paid people for Soros to cause mass chaos in our country. That's what he does. And there's also something coming out this week that I found, and I wasn't surprised at all about it, but on Wiki, in July of 2016, it was part of that 300,000 emails, which for a person like myself, I would say I read probably a little over 40% of them. And this came out, but what they found was the DNC and the Clinton Foundation paid Paul Ryan, Jeb Bush, John Kasich, Carly Fiorina, Mitch McConnell, John McCain. So think about that, people.
The rhinos.
The rhinos are getting paid. And this week, on Breitbart intercepted a phone call. It was with Paul Ryan, who is the Republican Speaker of the House, saying, clear as day, that Donald Trump is not his president and he will not support him. Now think about that. If that is not one of the most disturbing conversations you've heard, the speaker, now think, could you ever imagine in a million years Nancy Pelosi or anyone on the left saying they're not going to support Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton? Are you kidding me? They would, if all of them were caught with their hands in the cookie jar stealing millions or tens of millions of dollars, they still would turn a blind eye. If they caught them diddling a little child, they still would support them. Paul Ryan and those rhino pieces of trash, it's time for them to go. It should be our mission to vote them out.
Yeah.
Big time.
I'm with you. And man, that's so powerful. I'm totally agreeing with you. You remember what Paul Ryan was saying before Trump was the president?
Yeah.
He was going through the debates and all this. Oh, he was saying such ludicrous stuff. He's like, yeah, it's not like he was going to win anyway.
Of course.
Of
course. Like, he was hating on him back then.
Yeah, he was probably paid to back then also.
And one other thing I want to explain is, and I'm just going to tie in Charlottesville. Sal and I talked this at length, but something came out this week, and I remember we asked this question, and I said, why would the cops walk these members that were opposing one another into each other? It made no sense to me. And I thought it was something fishy going on, so I did some further investigation. And of course, what we find out is this. The mayor, this Michael Singer, who's a radical left-wing liberal, he's married to a woman named Emily Blount, who is an American university professor, which is probably one of the most left universities, which has become the universities of America, not all of them, but I'd say 90% have become basically an incubator of starting terrorism and starting anti-American behavior. So Emily Blount is a far left ultra-liberal. Her husband is, and he's the mayor of Charlottesville. Terry McAuliffe is the governor of Virginia. Well, what they were told was to stand down. The cops were told to stand down. Also, what the cops said is they saw buses pulling up of members of BLM getting off, members of Antifa getting off, which is no big thing. That makes sense. However, there are also members with KKK shirts on there. So people, when have you ever seen KKK members, Black Lives Matter members, and Antifa members getting along harmoniously together? Because here's another question. How is it a KKK member wears a shirt with KKK on it like it's a sports jersey? That is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard in my life. If they were KKK members, they'd have the cloak, the hoods. They didn't have any of that. They had black shirts on with white letters or vice versa. It was all a setup.
I thought white supremacists never wanted to be seen.
Exactly.
And then that thing on Twitter, oh, we're outing the white supremacists. It just all was so fishy and so like, hippo-ized for me. I'm super skeptical about all this crap. I don't believe anything I see on there.
No, so it was complete nonsense, and we all know this. And before we go any further, I just want to remind you guys, anyone looking to make a comment, a text, a phone call, please call. I'm going to say it twice. 973-435-0663. Once again, 973-435-0663. Sal and I welcome any comments, whether you support us, whether you're in the middle, or whether you're against us. We're more than happy. But if you do call and you're against us, at least make sense. Deal in some facts.
Put an argument together. Don't just yell at us. Anyway, I wanted to talk about before how we were talking about the PC culture and how the alt-left, they like to use moral superiority on situations where you logically know they're wrong. Like, just they're so wrong in so many different ways, and it's so bad, and it's like they get to you by trying to shame you. And they're trying to shame you into silence so you don't have an opinion at all. And like, think about this. Think about social justice warriors to be specific. Think about like when this all started, everyone kind of remembered fat shaming. Remember fat shaming?
I remember that.
That was like the first social justice topic was fat shaming.
Yeah, you're right.
And think about this though. I mean, don't just yell at somebody eating a cheeseburger and call them a fat piece of shit. Don't do that. I'll get you on that. That's wrong. But obesity has got to be what, the #1 killer in America now?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a big supporter of many diseases that occur.
That, like many of the topics that they spew about, they just want to shame you to get you off, even though it's a real relevant topic. People are dying from obesity. You should not be eating so much. We should not be consuming the sugar like we do in this country. But you get fat shamed. You hate fat people if you try to help somebody.
Exactly.
You can't say anything to them because it becomes shaming and hate.
Right.
It's like, well, don't you think you should lose a few pounds? It's not healthy. You could get diabetes. You hate fat people. You're a fat hater. And it's just like, no. And then it kind of spiraled out of control from that point on. Like, if you notice, like anything you do is shaming.
Well, it's funny you mentioned
gay shaming.
Right, gay shaming.
Sorry,
but
anything.
It's funny you mentioned this because I remember back, and I would say it was back in the early 90s, I was flying a lot. I'd be on planes 4 to 5 times a month, and the stewardesses predominantly were in shape. They were thin. And then I think what happened was a very obese woman wanted to be a stewardess, and she didn't get hired, and she sued the airlines. So Sal is on the money. It was the first thing that became like political correct shaming. And I think within a year, the whole spectrum of stewardess profiles changed. And listen, people, all of you have flown before. The space in a plane is tight. I remember when this first occurred, I would be on long flights overseas. I'd be going to Denmark or Belgium or, you know, Sweden or whatever the case may be, Europe. And I remember I was sleeping, and as this stewardess is coming down the pathway, I felt like I got hit by a linebacker. She crushed me because, and I'm not trying to be rude, but it's a fact. I'm sleeping and I'm kind of out of my seat, like, and I just get whacked in the face by this woman, and like I was like, what? Because she couldn't fit down the pathway. And that is the exact thing Sal's talking about, because now everything becomes acceptable, because now you can't say anything about anybody.
That's exactly my next point, is that PC culture made it, you can't laugh at anymore at anybody about anything. There's no, you know, you're going to offend somebody if you laugh or you joke
and
around.
we're not talking about being cruel.
Not just
right.
Joking. And
like in generalization.
Yeah, a lot of people joke around to kind of help people too. Like, you don't want to call someone fat, but you're like, hey, you know, wouldn't it be great if you did such and such? You know, but they make it so you get offended about everything, so that if you say anything against what, you know, people are shaming about, you become a racist. If it's ambiguous talk, if it's like, I denounce all hate and all bigotry, like
right.
Trump said, that's ambiguous talk. That's, you know, he's KKK because he said that.
Right.
Which you can't be ambiguous in PC culture. You have to name the group.
Right. That's what they
want.
It's such moronic thought processes. And if it's okay, Sal, there's something I want to discuss, and it's about racism in America.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Sal just mentioned racism. I can't take credit for this. However, I just saw the best. It was the best interview I've ever seen in my life of a conservative destroying. It was destruction of a liberal host. And it's Dr. Lee Elder versus this guy, I think his name is Rubino.
Dave Rubin.
Dave Rubin. So Dave Rubin comes right out and says, I'm a liberal and my job is to defend black people. So Dr. Lee Elder said, well, what's your problem? You think there's racism in America? He goes, well, slavery. And he quickly denounced that. He said, slavery is ridiculous. There's no one who's walking on the planet Earth or in America right now who's been a victim of slavery. Okay, what else you got for me? And then he went into, he couldn't say it. And Lee Elder, with all props to Lee Elder, was brutal to him. Not nasty, but like, come on, give me something else. You know, you're wasting my time. And the guy, Dave Rubin, was shaking in his boots. He couldn't. So he said police brutality. And it seemed to me that that Lee Elder, Dr. Lee Elder, set the trap, and Dave Rubin walked in, and boom, he got hit with that big bear trap right on his leg, and he's caught screaming, because here's what he said. He said all the incidences that happened under Barack Obama were all basically created by the Obama administration, all the racist claims. And he went to all the names: Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Ferguson, Missouri, with Michael Brown, and then he said Freddie Gray. And he used a great analogy for Freddie Gray. Freddie Gray, if you're not aware, was a man who was he was arrested and he died in a van being transported to the police station. And the Obama administration quickly said racism without getting any information. Dr. Elder said this: how could it be racism in Baltimore when the national average of black people is 13% and Baltimore is 45%? That's almost 3.5 times the national average. In addition, the mayor is black, the deputy mayor is black, the police chief is black, the second in command of police is black, the AG, attorney general, is black, the prosecutor is black, the city council is predominantly black and 100% Democrat, the police force, the staff, is predominantly black. So if all this is going on, and they are the major decision makers and operators who can create an environment of civility and peace. How is it racism if this black man, if you thought was injured by a police group, they're all black? It makes no sense. And then he said something else. He said there was a study done, a very liberal university, University of Washington, and he said these were the results of the study. I did not know this, but I found this incredibly fascinating. He said that in the study, white cops were hesitant to pull the trigger on black suspects because they were afraid of being labeled a racist. So he said in 40 years, in the last 40 years, black shootings are down 75%. But what he did say is whites have flatlined. So in 40 years, blacks have been being shot at say a clip of 100 per year. They're down to 25, where whites are being shot at 100, still 100. So he said your claim is false. So, and these are FBI statistics. And then Dave Rubin went into, oh well, blacks can't get jobs or blacks can't go to school. And he said that's untrue. Affirmative action makes that if Sal has a score on his SATs and a GPA of X, and a black person has the same, the black person gets in before Sal. Also, when blacks are looking for, blacks who live in poverty are looking for financial aid to go to college, grants and loans for businesses, they're much more apt to have opportunities to do so. And this is Dr. Lee Elder, who's a black man, saying this. So everything that was said was debunked. And at the end, Dave Rubin is actually sitting there saying, I kind of agree, stuttering. I kind of agree with you. You're putting out a very strong argument. And he said, well, what do you think is the basis for all this happening in the inner city? And he goes, and it was great because I didn't know this either. He says, the fact that 75% of black children today are born without fathers, and 25% of whites are born without fathers. And that's up from the early 60s, from 25% for blacks and 5%. So they basically went up, not exponentially. The blacks went up 3 times, the whites went up 5 times. And he basically called it a neutron bomb for our country. Yeah. And the way he went into it was, he said that there was and you guys remember him, and he might be dead now, but there was a guy named Patrick Moynihan. He was a congressman out of New York, a very ultra-liberal guy. He came up with something called the Moynihan Report, and he did it with Lyndon Johnson. And what he said was they were going to do a war on poverty. And what they said is they gave incentive for white mothers and black mothers and Hispanic mothers and every other minor to not have the father in the home. So it became advantageous financially to take the father out of the mix. And that's so self-evident today. And they're saying that was the reason why all this is going on. So it's not racism at all. It's basically the government. These women were marrying the government, if you think about it. I know that sounds ridiculous, but they're marrying the government financially because that's how they're getting their butter, their bread buttered, is financially. And the fathers abandon their responsibility.
If you want to break it down even further, it's just the breakdown of the nuclear family.
Exactly.
It's really the destruction of this country. It's sad, and it's what the alt-left is trying to do. I mean, this is what their goal is. Push it. I'm going to be harping back to the PC culture this whole time. This is what I'm talking about today. And it's just the alt-left's ignorance of history is at an all-time malevolent level. It's unreal, like how ignorant they are to the past history. And what's the saying? You don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Exactly.
So by trying to get rid of it all, aren't they a little worried? Or it's just, that brings out the even bigger picture of their thinking. They don't look ahead. They don't even look ahead one step, half a step. They have no idea what they're doing. It's just, we see social justice, we're going to go tackle it, and once it's done, on to the next one.
Right. And it's funny because to build on what Sal's saying, our country has become divided with the chasm the size of the Grand Canyon. And I don't mean to keep harping back to the media, but they're the major group that are causing this. And it's interesting because I mentioned this in a couple podcasts, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's crucially important. For the first time in the history of America, think about this. We have Black Lives Matter, Antifa, neo-Nazi progressive left people align with our enemy, which is radical Islam. Because if you think about it, people, what they're doing with the monuments and statues or what they have done or what they want to continue
The
to
alt-left
do,
is doing.
the alt-left, is exactly what Muslims did to erase Christianity.
That's what ISIS is doing right now.
They do it all the time, and they were destroying all the Christian in Mosul, and Iraq, and Palmyra, the ancient the ancient city of Palmyra. They're doing all they want you to believe if they burn it or destroy it, it never existed. That is a very scary thing to kind of build on what Sal just said.
Totally right. It's a wild time. You know. So like this PC culture that we lived in for the past 8 years, they created a culture of absolutes. And now I want to ask the question to Gary. We already talked about this. What absolute in your life? When is there ever an absolute certainty in your life other than death? There are none.
There's two: death and taxes.
Yeah, so
that's it.
So to create a culture where you have absolute certainty in things, and then you can take sides on these points and these values is just so absurd, and we're so far beyond where our founding fathers ever imagined we'd ever be. Like they never thought people in Congress, senators would be in Congress or in Senate for 36 years. They never imagined lifelong politicians. That wasn't the goal. That wasn't what they thought was going to happen.
That was actually what they were opposing.
Yeah.
And something else that's occurring that's scary. And I remember we talk about it, but I remember back when Facebook first started and we were having these conversations, and you could just see the propaganda and rhetoric escalating to a fever level. But there's something going on that's not being talked about a lot. And every day, our freedom of speech, people, that is the founding basis of our government, of our society, besides all the Judeo-Christian values. Freedom of speech is probably the number one thing. People have died, bled, become injured, live without limbs for freedom of speech. And people don't know this, but in January 2016, Hussein Obama signed a bill called the Counter-Information and Propaganda Act, which basically allowed branches of the government to control social media outlets like Yahoo, YouTube, Google. And they basically have an algorithm in these 3 or 4 organizations that we know about that if you're a conservative, your information gets funneled to the back pages. So Sal's an expert in Yahoo. He knows this all the time.
We call it the media gulag.
Exactly.
That's what I was saying last week.
And conversely, the liberal agenda gets pushed forward. So, for example, if you're looking up something, and we discussed this a couple times with the dictionary, fascism. Fascism used to have a different definition after 2000, before 2006 or 7. Now, if you go to fascism, it has a progressive right movement. That's exactly what we're talking about. But now it's even a worse level because now it's on a daily basis. And in January of 2017, Barack Obama, although he was not the president, he made a speech where he said that fake news on the right is a threat to our democracy, which in all actuality was transference. It's exactly what we talk about. So it's actually what they're doing, but they threw it on the right or the conservatives. And so now you have Zuckerberg and these groups, and they formed a coalition called the Renegade Group. And the Renegade Group are these individuals in these organizations I just mentioned. Their sole job, these are groups of individuals. Their job is to basically eliminate or silence as much of conservatism as they possibly can in their websites. That's funneling crucial information. How do you think your children learn? How do you think when your children have to do something? People like Sal and I and us deplorables, we're intelligent enough to know that something's going on here. The indoctrination of children, they don't know any better. So they're being brainwashed, whether they know it or not, by our social media outlets. It's been signed and delivered right here in these documents.
Yeah. Look at Milo Yiannopoulos did a great interview with James Damore. Jordan B. Peterson, he did a great interview with James Damore. That was the guy who wrote the Google memo that started this whole cascade of just, this is what's going on in these places. Like all the knowledge now that we have just from that one memo from the kid.
Right.
It was great.
Yeah.
And he's a very shy.
Yes, but
he can really write. He's not that well of a reformed speaker, but he can really write his ass off. So
watching that interview that Sal just mentioned, he's a very bright dude. I think he's a graduate of Harvard, and he's got his master's and from MIT.
Yeah. And like biology
or something.
Yeah, he's great.
And I'm not criticizing him, but I think he's just socially inept.
Yeah.
As far as communicating, talking, but that's fine because that wasn't what he was planning to do. This kid,
he didn't want to do
no, this kid is just a kid who's working somewhere. But Sal's dead on the money. He writes incredibly well.
If you guys are still numb to the situation, the Google memo stemmed from a Google diversity camp that he was forced to go to. So he was learning all these things about diversity that he was forced to go through from his employer, and then he saw things that was at this camp that he knew was just wrong. It wasn't just wrong, it was reprehensibly wrong. So he decided to do what anybody should do at a job. You go to the higher ups, you state well written out why this is not right. Why
it was well written.
Why this affects me negatively and how this is against the law to even do. He got fired from it, and now he's suing them even tenfold because of it.
Correct. And I've seen an interview with him. He was on Tucker Carlson on Fox. Well, I didn't see the interview on Fox. I saw it online. And he's not articulate. He kind of gives a lot of
he's like a yes and no.
Yeah, like one word type answers. However,
read it.
Read it.
It's very articulate.
It's brilliant.
Read it.
It's brilliant. So with that being said, he's not a guy that you're going to look to promote a message. But if you do read him, and that's fine. Listen, everybody has their thing. I couldn't do what he did. I can't pass a master's program in MIT. So everyone has their thing, but he's a very, very, very good writer, and he's talented. And when he explains what's going on, you kind of see it outlined in black and white. How, as to go back to Sal's first discussion topic, how politically correct and social justice warriors this nation and businesses. Here's another thing: we don't talk a lot about businesses in this country. Many of our businesses are part of this master plan. If so, how come none of them go against Antifa? You never hear of any of them. Matter of fact, how come they still advertise on these radical left-wing spewing hate? But when a conservative says something ridiculous that's not even remotely in the same ballpark, they pull all their ads. They've done it time and time again.
News on the street is that BLM and Antifa are about to be classified as terrorists. So we'll see if that actually happens.
Yeah, the petition was signed, and I think for those of you on Facebook, you might have seen it. And I think they said 100,000 signatures were needed. I think there's in the span of a few hours,
100 million.
Yeah, probably. There probably was. And so that's out there right now.
And the overarching theme for me today, obviously, is the political culture, or the political correctness culture. And that, I've been saying it from probably the first podcast, that's why the alt-left does not understand Trump at all. It's because they take him seriously. They take his words literally. He's supposed to be taken seriously as a president, but not literally. Don't take him literal word for word, but take him seriously.
Yeah.
That's what I see the major problem is with the alt-left. They cannot decipher language. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a mental block, a disability, but they cannot decipher between actual threats, him being sarcastic, him just putting on a show. They just can't, where I feel like it's easy for them. He's blowing smoke up someone's ass, or he's trying to talk tough, or okay, this is not what it seems. They just don't get it.
I just think they don't care. They do not care if Donald Trump agreed with them.
That's my next point, yeah.
Go ahead.
My next point was this guy, Sam Harris. I talked about him before. He is not a Trump supporter at all. He actually despises Trump from all I can take into account. But what's his background? He's an intellectual dude. He's very smart. I forget exactly what his background is, but he's known for being smart. He's that kind of guy.
Okay.
But anyway, on his own show, he read President Trump's Paris Accord speech. But before, he didn't say it was from Trump. He didn't say who wrote the speech. He just read it. And then he got all his followers were like, oh, that's great. That's amazing. Great speech. Who wrote that? President Trump. He's the one who wrote it and said it. And then everyone's like,
that was a shit speech.
Well, he forgot to say this.
Right.
And it's just like, oh, he got you. A guy who hates Trump, he just had to see for himself, I think, what it was actually the climate of his audience. Exactly. They just hate the guy. They hate him because it's fashionable.
Right.
Because, oh, this is what we're doing right now. Like the kids with the statues that we see, they're only doing that because they think they're being cool. They're just so uneducated.
Well, the funny
and
part
unintelligent
is predominantly the statues they're ripping down are Democratic.
They're
figures.
all paid by Democrats. Like,
which is kind of funny. You know, they don't even they don't even know.
That's the nonsense they feed into.
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. And if you don't see what's going on, it is as anti-American as anything I've ever seen in my life. And it's a pervading action that's occurring every single day. And they just want to keep upping the volume more and more and more. Thank you for that call, by the way, to the hotline. But that's what's going on. Yeah.
And I just want to talk real quick, real lightly, to liberal people about their love of Colin Kaepernick and how this guy. The reason no one took Colin Kaepernick seriously, just so you know out there, he didn't have one formal thought of his own. Everything he said was a parrot of somebody else.
You know what that was? That was his girl. He was newly dating a girl from the prior year. Then I think he's engaged to her. Come to find, she's a member of Black Lives Matter.
Oh,
so, and she's a
I didn't know this.
So there you go. So there you go. So you're dead on. So Sal, let me tell you something about Sal. Sal's predictions are always right. I don't know what it is about him. He has been right 100% of the time. So go, because he didn't even know that. He had no clue.
I didn't know that. Yeah. But it's just like, and then the liberal mindset is going to come back at me. If we had someone here, well, you know, Colin Kaepernick's jersey sales are like one of the highest ever right now. You know why? You know what? People are burning them at the rate that at an exponential rate. They're burning his jersey.
Exactly.
That's like the fire starter at a fucking party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at the tailgate.
Yeah,
that's
what they're doing. That's the fuel. That's the the charcoal.
Yeah, and listen, that's the only money Kaepernick's going to get because he ain't getting a job.
He better save it.
Yeah, he better save it. But then there's another group or another media network that we really haven't mentioned, and they've always been thought of kind of out of the box of politics but I despise ESPN. I fucking hate them.
Me too.
And all of a sudden, somehow along the lines, I don't know when, I don't know where this occurred. I don't know if it came from the higher ups of ESPN, which, think about this, people, from back in the day, what was sports always known as? It was known as a place to go and escape the everyday problems. And it really started during World War I and World War II. So
when they had the women's leagues, just to get people's minds off of it. Like,
sports is a place that politics does not belong at all. And this is a political show. Sports should never be addressed with politics. I'm not talking about talking points. I'm talking about the games, the activities, the discussion of a game. So somehow, and I personally worked for Bob Lay. He is one of the founding broadcasters of ESPN back in the day.
Outside the lines.
Outside the lines, he does on Sundays. Back then, Bob Lay was always a kind of left-leaning liberal. And doing what he does and outside the lines, I'm fine with. That's a show. That's a show, which means you or I, Sal, anyone out there can elect to watch this or change the channel. I'm fine with that. I have no problem with Bob Lay. It's freedom of speech. God bless you. If he's successful, good. And I like some of his outside the lines. They're good.
Yeah, some of them aren't bad.
Some are good. However, ESPN has decided to inject politics in almost every discussion on sports there is. Every single one. And to build on Colin Kaepernick, because now you have some of these other idiots saying that they're going to protest too. You have this idiot, Max Kellerman, who is an ex-boxer who was never ultra successful. He must have got hit in the head too much because he's now calling for white athletes to do it. Join in. And I'm like,
that's mandate from ESPN.
Yeah.
I don't think that's him. Because I remember Max Kellerman when he was just on HBO Sports.
Yes.
And he is a beast at boxing commentating. One of the best boxing commentators there is Max Kellerman. So to hear him say something like that, I feel like that's not him. I don't think that's him.
It could be.
Yeah.
If you're predicting, you're probably right. Even Dempsey doesn't say that's him.
Wait, get out of here.
But it's funny though, because then you got all these other people, and I don't want to watch sports. And I got to tell you something. I used to be growing up, I was a crazed baseball fanatic. I could tell you everything about every baseball team from the late 60s to the late 80s. Now, not so much. Football, same. I don't watch football, NFL football anymore, only because of this. And it would be different if the NFL condemned what's going on. But you have this piece of shit commissioner, Roger Goodell, who, I don't know if you guys know this, as he's earned over $150 million plus as commissioner of the NFL. That is an incredible amount of money. Incredible. I know people say to me, well, hey, listen, you got to pay him because he's made the league successful. Okay, that's fine. But my thoughts are this. Roger Goodell's job is to promote football to the American public.
The next America's game, right? That's
exactly.
What they're trying to brand it as. They're trying to brand it as that. They're losing right now.
But here's the funny thing, people, and I know a liberal has said this to me when I mentioned this. Oh, but Gary, you're wrong, because doesn't football and the National Football League do all those great things with the military, and they do with putting flags out and saluting them? And I said, yeah, they do. But guess what? Do you know this? I don't know if you guys know this. I know this because I know a buddy who works at ESPN. The military has to pay the NFL to do so.
I didn't know that.
They have to pay. So in order for the military to put a flag or have their soldiers out there or do a tribute to somebody, they have to pay out of their government budget to the NFL. The NFL does nothing for free. Believe me when I tell you. Talk to a volunteer of the Super Bowl. They don't get paid.
So that's all basically just trying to sponsorship.
Exactly, their sponsorship. Oh, and for the military, it's a good recruiting tool. I'm not going to deny that. People love football. People watch the Super Bowl and all that stuff at record rates. But if you don't know this, look at last year when all this garbage started with Colin Kaepernick. The NFL ratings tanked.
I mean, it's just going to keep going down.
Tanked.
So it's going to keep going down. I mean, and I think people are finally becoming conscious about these guys killing each other out there. Like they're really hurting themselves bad for just entertainment. What are we, barbarians now? We're watching this.
Well, that's a great point because Roger Goodell didn't even care.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm good.
If I'm gonna watch people kill each other, I'm gonna watch fighting. I'm gonna watch MMA. I'm gonna watch boxing.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Well, no, but my point is, and we talked about this. Roger Goodell, and I'm building on what Sal just mentioned about the head trauma cases. Roger Goodell he buried the reports of these men committing suicide because at the age of 40, young men were in like frontal lobe dementia where they were having hallucinations. They were neurotic. They were fearful for their lives. And
it's dark.
It's dark. And I mean, if you watch the movie Concussion, they kind of go through it. I'm not here to do a movie review, but they kind of do. They outline what's going on, and all these men have died. And Roger Goodell buried the report. He didn't even care about his own employees.
Yeah, these are the guys who make him that $150 million. The one good thing I saw though was I hate Jerry Jones now. I'm not even the biggest football fan, but I don't obviously Dallas Cowboys. I'm a Giants fan.
Right.
So that's the reason for that hatred. But he said today, I don't know if you saw that post. He's like, if you don't stand for the national anthem on my team, you're off my team. Which I applaud him 100% for that.
Yeah, I mean, you could say what you want about Jerry Jones. Yeah. That is a brilliant move. But I'm going to tell you something. How many other owners have done that?
Well, that's America's team.
Yeah.
So, he has to. If he didn't say something, I think people would have really got on him.
And to be honest with you, I would like someone to do it on the Cowboys because I'm a Cowboy fan. And I'm saying I would like someone try to do it and see what he does. And if he cut them, I'd be the happiest guy on the planet. So I'd be the happiest guy on the planet. You got anything else?
Well, no, the last thing I wanted to do an update, one of the stories that we've been following for a few weeks, the Awan brother, Awan. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the devil in the flesh herself, she said this week, I don't know, maybe it happened last week too, and I mentioned it last week, I just want to reiterate the propaganda that the alt-left likes to spew. She said that by them arresting the Awan brother for all this illegal, treasonous, terrorist activity that he was doing, funding money, that all that was trying to distract from the Russia-Trump narrative. An absolute joke. And everything got distracted from the Russia-Trump narrative because all this racism crap started. But she said this last week. I was like, to no end in their minds does the ideology stop. Nowhere does it stop.
No analogy you want to use, Sal? I'm going to use a Texas Hold'em all-in poker tournament analogy. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is down to her last blind, and her what do you call it?
It's a 2 of clubs.
And her what do you call it? And her competitor has a mountain of chips, and she got this little shitty stack, and she's like, all in, and she just gets crushed because still talking about Russia Trump, you have to be out of your mind.
Even her own party is they're eating their own. They really don't like her now. They're turning on her. You can see it.
Well, and there's before Sal goes. I don't know if Sal wants to talk about anything else after this. I just want to mention one other thing. With all this going on that's been occurring ad nauseum, I did something this week, and I took some time, and I went back, and I want to make sure I became inherently aware of the Communist Manifesto once again. Because as Sal mentioned, the Rules for Radicals is an offspin of that. But the originator was Karl Marx, who is one of the biggest dictators who killed tens of millions of people. And I went back and read the Communist Manifesto, and there was a gentleman he was Hitler's right-hand man. He was a Nazi propagandist. His name was Joseph Goebbels. And I want to read just really quickly his 10 points of controlling a country and its citizens and then turning it into communism. And then after I'm done reading them, and I'll be quick, tell me what this sounds like. And his first one is, a lie told once is a lie, but a lie told 1,000 times becomes truth. That's his number. And then he said, again, truth is the greatest enemy of a dictatorship. 3, propaganda must target groups for hatred and violence. 4, the rank and file are very simple people, so make sure you keep your message the same, which is, that's pretty funny. He's calling you people stupid. 5, he said, basically, the press is the greatest tool to advance our cause and win against democracy. 6, government must control all public opinion. 7, we must destroy all traditions of a democratic society, history, religion, family, education, and love and compassion of fellow man.
That's a big one. Right?
Big one.
Number 7.
8, the greatest statesmen of a dictatorship are also the greatest criminals. 9, conquer the street. You conquer the street, you win their minds, and you win their hope. And then you conquer the country. 10, and this is what we just mentioned, blame the opposition on what you are guilty of. It's called transference. So with that being said, Joseph Goebbels, 10 major points. What does that sound like, people? You tell me, Sal.
Sounds like the alt-left. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like, I say the alt-left because it encompasses all liberal groups. Everyone, where the alt-right was just Nazis and KKK people, the alt-left is all liberals, all media. It's the alt-left.
Yep.
It's like they were trying to say alt-right to hurt our feelings, when in actuality, it's the alt-left. Let's just label it what they labeled us. Well, like, and that's not even labeling us.
No, like, it's funny. I was reading this and I was scratching my head saying, oh my God, this is exactly to the T. I could not, if you asked me to write this, Joseph Goebbels, I couldn't write it any better. Matter of fact, I think somebody in the Democratic Party at the DNC, at these rallies for Antifa and BLM, are carrying this around in their pocket like notes, because it's
a study.
It's a study. This is not even a playbook. That's just what they're doing this. They're doing this on everything. This is exactly what's occurring. And one last thing, and then I'll let Sal go out, and then we'll go out with our song. There was a documentary. I want you guys to watch it if you get a chance. It's 90 minutes. It's called The Grinding Down of America. It was done about Barack Obama's second year in office. So it was about 6-7 years ago. It was brilliant. It outlines everything Sal and I discussed today, specifically about communism, neo-Nazi, progressive, left-wing, activity to a T. It's a good watch. I highly recommend it. But with that being said, one last thing. Our phone number, once again, 973-435-0663. One last thing, and I'm going to let Sal go out. If you guys get a chance, now I know everybody, I'm not saying you have to go there, but I know on Facebook I get a lot of people saying, how can we help? How can we do it? This organization called The American Brand, BRAND.org. Sal's going to post it on the website, on our Red podcast.
I'll be tagging them.
Go to it and check it out. We need to counterbalance these evil scumbags out there that are trying to destroy our country.
Support some good people.
Absolutely. They're great people. They're heroes and patriots.
Yeah, I just wanted to end tonight's show on my side. Gary, you can finish.
No, I'm pretty much done.
Okay, I want to talk and just finish with how this country was founded, on the values this country was founded. It was founded on Christian Judeo values, which the two overall hierarching values that we succumb to, like if we believe in Jesus, is self-sacrifice and love. That's how this country was found, not on hate, not on racism, not on what the media is telling you, not on any of this crap. This country was founded on love, first and foremost, and then self-sacrifice. So to have anything else come about and just slander our founding fathers' names and slander this great country that I love so much, it hurts me deeply to my core. And I just wanted to end that we will always have self-sacrifice and love, and those are always the values that we'll maintain in this country. I said it before in the previous podcast that, an ounce of good will defeat a pool of evil. And I think it's gonna happen right before our eyes. I think we see the pool of evil surrounding us, and we're the ounce of good. And evil will be defeated. And it's something I visualize. It's something I know is gonna happen.
And I think that's a great way to go out. The founding fathers in this country never intended for this to be. I think they're probably rolling over in their graves.
Yeah. They could have never foresaw the internet and this and that, but so I give them great credit because love and self-sacrifice. That was the whole mission statement.
Exactly. And the thing is that every civilized society makes mistakes. We all have our stains that have occurred since 1776. It's a long time ago, people. None of us were here. None of our really ancestors were here. Very few. Black people weren't here. My people weren't here. Sal's people weren't here. My wife's people weren't here. Many of your people weren't here. In order to be here in 1776, you have to be pretty much of British descent. And yeah, there's British descent people here, absolutely. But of 350, 60 million people, they're a very small percentage. And now we have become a melting pot of greatness. Yeah. We are by far the greatest society ever built. And I love it as much as Sal loves it, as much as all of you love it, all you deplorables, all the people I talk about. And I refuse. It is unacceptable to have these radical millennial scumbags, trash bags come in and try to destroy it. Yeah. Too many not good, bad word. Too many great men and women have bled across the pond in places that we have never been, lost their limbs, died, left families for them to tarnish their memory. That flag behind me, that is one of my favorite fucking sights I've ever seen in my life. To this day, when I'm driving and I see a flag flying on a highway, on Route 3 going towards the city, when I go in there, there's a huge flag. It's humongous. No matter what, on a sunny day when I'm passing by it and I see the sun rising above the flag and the waving in the wind, I get chilled, I get goosebumps, because I realize, and a lot of my dad and all his brothers, I think he had 12 brothers, every one of them served in either the Korean or World War II. One of his brothers was killed, who I never met, obviously. A lot of people, my friends on Facebook, served. A lot of people risked their lives. So I refuse. And if Sal and I can help in any way, shape, or form by doing a podcast, we're going to do it. Yeah. This is the least we can do, because those men and women, they preserve our freedom to do so. And here's the funny part. They preserve those assholes' freedom to do so too.
They do.
And what do? They spit on them. They disrespect them. They drag a 75-year-old grandmother through the streets. No more. Because very soon, if that continues, the left will not know what hit them, because there is a groundswell of Judeo-Christian people, believers in this country, patriots, heroes that are going to come out.
Yeah.
And when they do,
Of all colors.
of all colors, all shapes, all races, all creeds, and when they do, these little cockroaches, these parasites, aren't going to know what hit them, because we are the exterminators, you progressive left scumbags, and you better know that, because when it happens, you don't know what the hell's going to hit you.
We'll be crying back to mommy.
Exactly.
Back to the basics.
Your underoos are going to get soiled. So that, people, is my boy Sal, Gary Gabagool heading out on this stupid eclipse day. We're going out with Blinded by the Light. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of the eclipse.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you guys were, I'm not offending you, I hope.
I hope you got good pictures that you'll remember forever.
Yeah, enjoy. And have a great night. We'll see you next week. Gabagool out. Bro, you're awesome. Awesome. I think you said
I tried this
First,
fuck like twice.
no.
That was it.
You said fuck once.
Once.
But you know what? That's a good fuck. That's a good fuck.